Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the parenting podcast. I'm your host, Angie Grandt, the adoption coach. I am so excited to chat with you today. For today's topic, I want to talk about an interesting topic that when I first heard this concept, I thought, oh, wow. So let's jump right in. My question for you is, are you parenting with fear? Or are you parenting with love? And with this question, I mean, there are definitely two angles that we can think about this, right? Like, are you as a parent coming from a place where you're fearful that if you don't provide the right type of feedback and support to your kids, that the outcome, their future life, them as adults won't turn out well versus, loving them and trusting the process. So that's one end of it. But what I really want to talk about is the actual strategies that you use, the words that you say, the approaches that you use, because when I really think about using fear as a way to parent, it makes me cringe. If you've been hanging out here with me for a little bit, you know that helping parents raise kids from a tricky past, kids who've experienced trauma, kids who've experienced disrupted placement, kids who don't live with the family that they were conceived by, can be so traumatic to kids in ways that I think many of us aren't ready to acknowledge yet. So when I think about kids who start their life, their brain's already pre-wired to be on the lookout, to be have that fear response already stronger than it should be for a child. And then we look at parenting strategies. Many parenting strategies, behavior management strategies, are designed to use a little bit of fear to keep our kids following the rules, meeting expectations, moving in a direction that we want them to. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we think about things, threats as a parent, that's an easy one, right? If you don't, do X, Y, or Z, then, whatever consequence will happen. If you don't pick up your room, you're going to lose your video game system, right? That's a clear fear-based parenting strategy, and that we use a little bit of fear to get compliance from our kids, to get them to do what we want them to do. But this concept has really got me thinking about even the use of rewards, the withholding of rewards, right? If you clean up your room, we'll go out for ice cream or whatever your strategy is, using a reward like that, or every time you share with your sibling, you get a sticker. When we're using even reward-based behavior strategies, it implies that if our kids don't do as expected, that they're not going to get that thing. And we're right back in that use of a little bit of fear to gain compliance from our kids. I never really looked at it that way, but the more that I think about it, the more that I think, when kids are driven by external motivators to make a decision about their behavior, it implies that there's a little bit of fear that they might not meet somebody else's expectations. They might not, make their parents happy. They might not get that external reward that they're working towards if they don't do as they've been asked to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should never use rewards or we should never have consequences for behaviors. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do really want to challenge us as parents, as people supporting parents, to really think about the impact of our behavior management strategies that we're using, the impact that that has on the social emotional development, the confidence, the sense of self-worth. I really want us to think about the impact of the strategies that we're using to gain compliance from our kiddos. I want us to really think about that and really don't just do what some expert told us to do. Don't just do what we were raised to do or what we learned in a class or whatever it might be. But I really want to challenge you as you're listening to really think about the strategies that you use and what possible impact could that have on our kids. Because, the more that I learn about our kids' unique human design, our kids are all so unique. They all have their own design. And each of us, we as adults, our kids, every human on this planet has been given a role. Some people look at it as their energy type, but I look at it as a role, right? We all have this place, this role that we need to fill on the planet. So some of us are what might be called like a manifester, right? And when our kids have that energy type, they have this internal creative flow that is guiding them to what they're supposed to be doing. For example, right? That's just one type. Some kids have this internal flow of what they should and should not do. And when I say should and should not, I don't mean they're always going to get it right because our kids have to learn by trial and error or cause and effect or, making mistakes. I don't necessarily like calling them mistakes, but right, you get the idea is our kids are designed to not get things right the first time and to learn what they're supposed to learn when things didn't go as planned. But I do know that some kids, some adults have this internal drive. And so when we, as the parents, as the caregivers, are using these external, extrinsic rewards or consequences or whatever it might be, and our child goes from having this internal drive that is guiding them to fulfill their purpose, their role on this planet. They have this internal drive, but then we as the parents are teaching our kids to do things our way, teaching our kids to work towards a reward or away from a consequence. Well, really, ultimately, we're teaching them to not really follow that flow, to not really listen to their inner guidance. And I think it does such an injustice to the different roles that we're all supposed to play here. I think when we're using these external rewards and consequences to help direct good and bad behavior or expected or unexpected behavior, we're really teaching our kids to not listen to what their bodies are telling them to do. The same can be true for the other energy types, but that's just one example where, we know we have this internal flow. And so my purpose of today's episode is, I do like to keep my episodes short, which is funny because I'm such a talker and I could go on and on forever, but I want to make these really consumable so that you can listen to them on repeat and so that there's opportunity for you to follow up to ask questions about your specific child or your circumstances. But what I do want to leave you with is really, I'd love for you to really evaluate the strategies that you're using in your home to change your kiddo's behavior. Are you using fear to guide them? Or are you showing up with unconditional love and supporting them and following what their body, their mind, their soul is telling them to do? I'm not saying it's easy to do. And again, it is our role to keep them safe. Again, don't get me wrong on that. We're not supposed to just let our kids follow their internal flow out into the parking lot or into the road or into a lake, right? It is our job, of course, to keep them safe. But with all of those other things that don't matter so much, what if we let our kids follow their own inner guidance and we encouraged that and we instead parented them with just pure unconditional love and supporting them and becoming who they're supposed to be? Imagine how differently our kids would turn out if we put a little bit more onus on them to make those decisions about themselves and about what they feel compelled to do. So, anyways, like I said, I'm going to keep this one short. And I really want to encourage you to think about the behavior strategies that you're using in your home. And I would love to connect with you about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it too, right? I'm sharing my perspective, sharing what I'm learning, and really trying to make sense of what I'm learning about human design and child development and match that or mismatch it with what I've known from my past and my past experiences, not only as a human on this planet who's been parented, and I am a parent and a grandparent, but also everything that I've learned professionally about handling challenging behaviors and trauma and all of that. So yeah. Anyways, all right. So that's it. Thanks so much for hanging out. I hope you loved this episode, and I would love to connect soon. Take care. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.